Welcome, everyone. This is the resources and rationale for supporting equity in STEM in the early grade session for the Tennessee STEM Innovation Network Conference. Thanks for joining our video and hope that you've had a good conference so far. My name is Dale McCreedy. I'm the Vice President of Audience and Community Engagement at Discovery Center in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and the lead for the Tennessee Girls Collaborative. If you go to the next slide, please. And this is a picture of Discovery Center, where, for those of you who don't know, we're a children's museum in Murfreesboro, and we're located on 22 acres of wetlands and have lots of programs and opportunities for children and families to learn. My colleague.
Thanks, Dale. My name is Alissa Lange, and I'm the director of the preschool STEM lab, early childhood STEM lab, and I work at the Department of Early Childhood Education, and I'm the interim director of the Center of Excellence in STEM Education, both at East Tennessee State University.
A quick overview of what we're planning on talking about today. We'll first talk about research-based rationale for STEM and equity. Then we'll share some resources and strategies that integrate STEM and equity together for you to use in your classrooms or in your out-of-school time programs. And that will include some resources from the event collection, some hands-on activity suggestions, and some book suggestions. And then we'll share some upcoming opportunities that we think might be of interest to you in your going forward in Tennessee as you think about implementing STEM and thinking about equity. Wanted to start by saying, why did we think about this session? Alissa and I are both passionate about equity and about STEM learning, and also about really starting that early, right? Thinking about how children learn in their earliest ages and how important it is to be able to plug into those early ages with lots of messaging. So we believe that by leveraging resources that provide authentic and relatable images of real women in STEM and creating engaging and fun ways to relate to them, that you can also help all young children envision a future that includes STEM interests, hobbies, and careers as future professionals. And I do want to highlight the idea of interests and hobbies. I don't think any of us are trying to make every single child turn into a STEM professional, but we want to make sure that it's on their radar, that they know that they can if they want to, and that they have the experiences that make it a possibility for them.
Thanks, Dale. We want to talk just a little bit now about the why behind this session and this passion of ours. There's a increasingly large body of research and freely available reports that share the incredible power that early childhood STEM has in the learning trajectories of young children's lives. So we know that how children do at the beginning of kindergarten in math, for example, predicts how well they'll do in third grade and high school in math. But it also predicts how well they'll do in reading in third grade and high school. Better than early reading predicts later reading. So something's going on in math, and there's some interesting findings around science and knowledge of the world that parallel that. That are just so powerful for young children. And similarly, building on what Dale said, that really starts very naturally for a lot of young children really early. You can see in some of these images that curiosity, that wonder about the world around them, for many children is there already, and we can really capitalize on that and nurture that. And here are a couple of reports that are freely available. Early STEM Matters report, written by the Early Childhood STEM Working Group, and a recent National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine report published by the National Academies Press on science and engineering in preschool through the elementary grades. And so all of this just really starts at those formative years for young children. There's a series of really fascinating studies involving drawing a scientist and drawing an engineer. You may have heard of those. And this particular study does a review of decades of these draw scientist studies and found that there is some change. Thankfully, there's more representation, for example, with females being represented in these drawings, but men are still more commonly associated than women are with these drawings for children. And so what are we laying the foundation of for young children? and those very formative years, are they seeing around them scientists who are female, or scientists or engineers or STEM professionals who look like them? Do they see that as a possible opportunity or a career trajectory for themselves? And we really firmly believe that we as educators, both formal and informal, can make a difference in that. And that foundation really starts in the early years. The National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Math report that I referenced earlier talks about supporting teachers to increase representation of who does science and engineering, to include a range of historically marginalized groups, those who are still underrepresented in STEM careers, and so forth. And that includes women as well as others as well. So I have 3 elementary school children, and they go to an elementary school nearby, and I brought them to my office a couple weeks ago, and they looked at my door and saw that poster. This is what a scientist looked like on the door. I have a lot on my door, but the first thing they said was, "We have that poster in our classroom." That's the first thing they noticed, was this image of a female scientist, a female STEM professional, is salient for them in their classroom environment. That's the first thing they noticed. I thought that was fascinating, and what a powerful message that is. So how powerful is it that that's what they noticed, and that's what was salient for them? Of all the things in their classroom and all the things in my office, as you can see, that's what they got their attention. So if that's got their attention, what other young girls can get their attention grabbed by resources like this? And we know this isn't all that matters, right? We need to support young children and educators in a variety of ways, but these are some simple and free resources we think that can really make a difference.
Great, and that poster that Alissa just showed is really a great link to what I'm going to talk about right now, which is the If Then collection, which is funded by the Lyda Hill Foundation and is managed by the Natural Girls Collaborative and also the Association of Science Technology Centers. Discovery Center was lucky enough to be able to get some funding to both share these resources and replicate them in ways that could help teachers and even the public see more visibly what a scientist looks like, and actually to build some exhibits that we put into our in for visitors to be able to look at and engage with. And some of the things I'm going to share that now today will draw from that and are really models of things you could even implement in your classroom. The If Then collection is a collection. It's a digital library that has videos, posters, activities, all sorts of things that focus on 125 ambassadors, and the resources themselves continue to grow. There are activities, as you can see on the left, there's everything from inviting women professionals to your classroom, which is an awesome idea always, right? And going behind the scenes and seeing what they do. Some of the videos are actually great stories about what it meant to some of these women to be children and exposed to certain opportunities or experiences. And in fact, really highlight some of the ways in which adults were really critical in that work and in that connection. Whoops, could you go back one slide? Sorry. And so as you go to the resource, there will be a collection, but there also, just to highlight, there's this If Then collection educator hub, which has a number of these activities and also has some alignment to the standards, which potentially would be very useful. And just as a heads up, at the very end of this video, we will provide a link that gives you a 4-minute orientation that you can go on at your leisure. It'll orient you to the site. It's a complicated site, but there's a lot there, but I think it's really valuable to take this great tour that's been developed. And again, it's just a 4-minute tour that shows you what's there and how to search for things, whether it's location, content, background, whatever. It's really helpful. Thanks, Alissa. Next slide. So this is an example of how we developed a game for the Flora Discovery Center for the public to use. We call it the STEM Ambassador Bingo game. But what was really important to me when I was thinking about this was, how do we highlight that female scientists aren't just scientists, they're humans with rich lives in lots of different ways. And so one of the strategies here was to say, how do we introduce these incredible scientists and the diversity of them, by the way, which is they've done a really great job of, and really call out the fact that they don't fit, none of them really fit any of the stereotypes one would historically have thought about scientists, right? So if you look at the bingo card that is shown here, and there's actually a number of bingo cards with this, and we could make this available, but it was things like she likes playing board games, right? She's becoming a riding instructor, in free time, right? Explores dark and unusual places, or loves to crochet microbes. I mean, this is, my hope, our hope was that through looking at all the ways in which these selected ambassadors from the pool could actually, how there were so many different ways that they had hobbies and interests. It just seemed like it was a great way to kind of call that out, because that's where kids the thought was that was where they might enter. Oh yeah, I know I used to collect bugs in a jar. I used to put a lightning bug for a while by my bed, hopefully release it before it died, not always, but as a kid. But that was the start of a exploration in bugs, and I've always loved insects ever since. How do you start to think about that? So these are resources. The actual cards and the deck we have developed and can make available, but I've also made some copies, which if we were in person, I would have handed out. They were just copyable sheets that you could cut out on paper and have kids do and play the game. Again, a model, you don't have to use ours. You could do something yourself, or you could use ours. And again, there are similar resources on the If Then website that have games and activities that other museums and other partners have developed. Next slide, thanks. One of the other exhibit pieces we had was a picture of some of these ambassadors, and it was a matching game. Again, our goal as a children's museum was to say, how can we make careers sort of interesting to pre-K to fifth grade kind of an audience, right? You don't start talking heavily about career development, and I think that's very stressful to tell your kids, what do you want to be, right, this early, but rather to say, let's think about how you might connect as a child and what that might look like and who these children became. And so we reached out to a number of the ambassadors, and we were able to receive some pictures. Some of them were kind enough to dig in shoe boxes, whatever, and get us pictures of what they were like as a child, or pictures of them as children. So I wanted to just highlight two here because I just thought it was fascinating. Here's a picture of Nicole Sirica, who decided to become an aircraft maintenance technician after going to college and working in other areas, and then working in Southwest. She walked through the hangar and said, this is what I want to be. And I just thought it was really fascinating that the picture she chose to send me was a picture of her next to a small airplane. And here she is, an aircraft maintenance technician. And I also like this because not only is it non-traditional job, but it's also much more workforce skill, sort of focused in a way. Yes, she has a college degree, but you don't have to have a college degree to be in STEM. And I think there are a lot of pathways to think about how one can contribute and take advantage of their skills and how it can plug into STEM. Next slide, please. The second one I just thought was funny. And again, I do want to step back and say, no, I do not believe that all children at age 4 know what they're going to be. And I don't think we should expect that. But I do think that exposure is a lot. And highlighting at us as adults, thinking about whether we're parents or teachers or Girl Scout leaders or whatever, if we listen to interests that children have, we can kind of see that the strengths and the skills that children may draw upon. So here is Maria Perez, who is a paleontologist and who does a lot of fossil preparation at a museum, at the National Museum of Nature. And of course, her 4th birthday, she had a dinosaur cake, and now she's a paleontologist. So again, these were selected by these folks. I'm sure there was a filter. I'm not sort of arguing that there's a cause effect here, but I am saying that experience in children's past as they're growing up can really be influential and can be indicators that are really nice to sort of think about as we go forward. So this was the third exhibit that we developed that I'm sharing, again, as a model of something you could do in the classroom. The idea was that there were bins, and the challenge was to pick a tool. The bin had a bunch of stuff in it. These were on the screen in the red backgrounds are pictures of tools that were aligned with different STEM folks, but ultimately they were put in a big bin. And the idea was there's no wrong or right answer here. This was an opportunity for children and adults to talk about what things were, what do they do? You know, a third grader may not even recognize that you know, that's a bug collection apparatus and that there's a magnifier in there, for example, right? So the idea was to pick a tool, think about what it does, how does it work, and who might use it. And in fact, some of the tools we had, I think it was 6 different scientists and the 6 different bins. And at each bin, it was, if you studied evidence of the past, like archaeologists, or if you did blah, 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 like so-and-so, what tools might you need? And so the idea was, here's a way to sort. And I think you could do this in your own classrooms, whether it's even with pictures of tools or real stuff, right? You know, what are the things that people use? Because I think one of the most important things we can do as educators is, and advocates for STEM, is to broaden the notion of what it means to be a STEM professional or hobbyist, for that matter, right? So what does it mean? It's not necessarily at a lab with a microscope with goggles and, you know, the classics kind of crazy images. So this was just another example I wanted to share and have you think about as a possible tool you could use in your classroom. And again, some of this we would have done in person, but I think it comes through well enough here as we share this virtually. So the next thing, and Alyssa's going to talk about this more, but one of the things that also we know happens in classrooms, in homes, hopefully in all sorts of settings, is a connection between is the idea of trying to develop literacy skills. And in classrooms, sometimes I also appreciate that sometimes literacy and math take over STEM. And so I think one of the important things to recognize is that literacy and STEM can be combined in just so many ways, and that the skills that are connected with, for example, reading a book and understanding a science experience or experiment are really overlapping, that you're going to be asking questions, making observations, whether it's a book, oh, I'm noticing that, you know, so-and-so are friends in this book and something's about to happen, or I'm going to predict that so-and-so is going to build something in this story. You know, there's a whole process. There's a beginning, middle, and end of books. You know, and there's never really an end with science, right? But there is a conclusion. You do draw inferences and conclusions that lead to more information. And so this whole sort of cycle of critical thinking is overlapping, and I think is important to keep in mind.
Thank you. Yes, I love that connection. And I think also books and ELA and literacy can be a way in too. Just like Dale mentioned, interests and curiosities being a way in to maybe some of this content that might be a little uncomfortable for some educators or some adults. Books can be a great way in too. So there's a really lovely tie-in, bringing in children's literature with the goal of also having other ways to represent diverse STEM professionals for children to see themselves, right, in the books that they read. So we just have a few examples to show you that could build on the If Then collection to some extent. So The Girl Who Thought in Pictures is the story of Temple Grandin, and she just felt like she thought a little bit differently than a lot of other kids when she was growing up. And then it ended up really changing the way that we work with cows and farming based on her experiences. And that's just a beautifully illustrated story connecting to sort of social emotional development and how she felt as feeling a little bit different and an outsider, and really finding her place in a STEM career later on in life. There's, you know, the now often I hear a lot about the story of Katherine Johnson working for NASA And so there's great books for all ages focused on her career, a computer called Catherine. And here's another, I think this was an NSTA best of book choice, Wood, Wire, and Wings. Another children's book that illustrates a STEM professional who made a difference in a career. This is Emma Lillian Todd's story of how she invented a kind of an airplane. And so, yeah, I think these are just some examples, and there's so many more. But what's around you in your classroom or in the teachers' classrooms or homes that you work with that could highlight some young children who, like I said, maybe look like the kids in your class, or you know someone who's a scientist or a professional in your community, and how does this connection with what we have to write about and talk about and think about, right? How is that connected, tying back into what we think everybody is capable of when we talk about STEM, access to STEM, what STEM is, right? That it is really all around us. There's opportunities to think, reason, communicate scientific thinking and observations in everyday life. Actually, it's not just for that scientist in the white coat. And then who can be a scientist? Where really anybody could be if they want to be, right? If that's what how their interests lead them. So these are just some of the books that we've found we think really can be connections, ways in for schools to think more about STEM careers early on. I mean, the foundations for interests and so forth, and representation. The story I mentioned about the posters that my kids' teachers have up on their walls. I mean, these are simple things, and it's one step towards increasing representation of diverse professionals in STEM careers. And then a lot of the hands-on activities Dale mentioned absolutely could be used in classrooms and built on, extended into writing. I think about ELA, you could write about the tools you chose to put in each bin with a scientist. So, doing some documentation, some writing around that, interactive notebooks, and then, connected to these hands-on experiences as well, of course, that almost always get kids invigorated and curious as well.
So we thought we'd close out by just highlighting a couple of opportunities that are coming up that are statewide or available to any of you. There's 3 slides and then and 3 opportunities that we're highlighting, and then we'll close out with giving you some links. The first is that Discovery Center has been founded the Tennessee STEAM Festival 6 years ago. It's a 10 days in October 14th to 23rd this year. And there are events for everyone, intergenerational, young children, adults, all events for any audience across the state happening. And it's really designed to highlight the way that science, technology, engineering, art, and math are all around us. And so we invite you to think about ways that you can be involved. From a school perspective in Murfreesboro, all of the elementary schools had a STEAM walk where parents came in and saw what STEAM was happening in their classroom during that 10-day period. We've gone to restaurants where, a taco restaurant where people came in and tried to determine how much meat could be put in a taco shell before it broke. There was the science of fear, a presentation was made about that by a scientist, and then a scary movie shown at Belcourt Theater in Nashville. There are things happening in East and West and Middle Tennessee. And I just want to highlight right now that if you go to the tnsteam.org website, that there's opportunities to see what's happened in the past, to say that you want to participate this year. You can do things you're already doing anyway and just spread the word, or you can design your own new programs or events. It happens either where you are or at a partnership site. You really are in control of this. We like most of the events to be free, but if they can't be free, that's again your choice. So just check this out. And if you have more questions, there's lots of ways to reach us when you're on the tnsteam.org website, and there's ways to sign up to say you want to host something, or again, call us and let us know that you need help partnering or thinking about what to do. We're also really good at hand-holding and thinking about ways that we can help you think really out of the box about ways to highlight and make special whatever you want to do for yourselves, and then to make it broader. A second opportunity is we are a site for a national project called Leap into Science that provides free kits and resources around around 3 different themes. This is about light and shadow, and the idea is that you participate in a virtual or in person, but most of the trainings lately have been virtual, so it can happen anywhere. You participate in a 2-hour training. You'll be able to get a bin, and that bin will allow you to do an hour-long workshop on light and shadow, either with pre-K children, with elementary children in maybe an after-school setting or out-of-school setting, and then a family workshop. And it's possible that you can do any combination. It's a very flexible program. In order to get a free kit, we just ask that you try to use the kit 3 times, either 3 times with elementary students, or a pre-K and elementary, or a family workshop, whatever. But it's a really great opportunity, and we have workshops coming up that we will hold, and would love to hear if you're interested. So if you shoot an email either to me, which will be at the end of this, or to professionallearning@explorethedc.org, we will plug you into information about this, and would love to have you join us. We want to get these kits and resources out there, and have an opportunity to connect some really cool books and hands-on science experiences.
Thank you. And one more opportunity we wanted to share is one of the initiatives that Early Childhood STEM Lab is leading. This is our 2nd year of a virtual all-day professional learning event. We mail kits out in advance and support learning around what is STEM and what is integrated STEM in preschool. What does it look like? Why is it important? And how do we support that with young learners? So this is for educators, particularly coaches, directors, master teachers, who are going to return and then support teachers in their areas or in their centers. There are still spaces available, and the registration link is there as well. And you can also just email me. So that's one opportunity. I would just mention ecstemlab.com, which this link also takes you to. We also have a number of free resources on our website to support educators in early childhood STEM. We have a number of articles, some just came out that you can download and share and read about. We have a bi-monthly newsletter where we share an activity idea, and again, some opportunities and grants and resources as well. So our goal is really to raise up and support educators who work with preschool children, and also up to 3rd grade as well. So check us out as well. If that sounds interesting to you, feel free to share. And we thank you so much for your time. This is the way that you can reach us. These are our email addresses, and we're happy to talk STEM anytime. But we do thank you so much for tuning in. And Dale, we will share some links too that folks can download, so they can get the if-then and some of the other resources that we mentioned in the slides. You'll be able to download that, those links as well.
Great. Yeah. Thank you all for coming. It's been great thinking. We will see you. Hopefully, we're preparing this in advance of the conference, and Alissa and I will both be there on Monday. So hopefully we'll meet you and see you there. And we hope you have a great conference. Let us know if we can help you. Thanks.